Hello and welcome to this new video. Today we do something really exciting. We give analysts superpowers, or at least like more power to do their daily job. And I have Paul with me, and he is like the creator of the wonderful package Big Functions. And maybe we start with a small or quick introduction. Paul, can you quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Timo. Thank you for inviting me. Very honored. I'm working at Nickel. Nickel is a fintech. We open current accounts in small shops nearby home, and we opened 3.5 million customers in 10 years. I'm head of data there, and we do have 40 data professionals, 200 BigQuery users. And my aim here at Nickel is to enable data people and as well as teams in general to do everything they need with data. So we did it in two ways. We embedded some data analysts in teams. That's one way. So and we built a community of data analysts. So it's a people way, human way. And the second way, we built a lot of tools so that they can do everything from collection, the documentation, exposing data, analyzing and deploying algorithms, batch, real time. They can do everything. Yeah. And also the creator of Big Functions that I started 1 year ago.
And this is quite amazing also like that you pointed out, especially like the people and the tools thing, because I often come across that, at least like from an engineering standpoint, you think tools first because this is what you can control. But in the end, you have to get the people on it as well. If then there's one part missing. And as far as I understand, like Big Function, for example, is also like a part of the kind of tools that you use internally to support the analysts.
Yeah, sure. Actually, I started as a side project because I wanted to go even further than what we do at Nickel. I wanted not to empower only data analysts at Nickel, but empower every data analyst in the world, if it's possible, or at least BigQuery users to get started with. So I started as a side project. Basically, what we realized quite quickly that it was interesting to use it as well internally, right, in Nickel.
Okay, so you basically started outside. So just because I'm always curious, so what was the initial point where you thought, okay, this should be something that I would like to have in BigQuery? Can you still remember that?
Why I started Big Functions? Actually, it's quite also a personal history. Like I started at Nickel with only 3 people in the central data team. The data team grew. We are 40 data professionals. So I became manager of managers. And I used to have it the hands-on a lot. And in the end, as manager, I don't have the hands-on anymore. So I wanted to keep on this. So this one point. Second point, I always wanted to do some entrepreneurship and to create an open source project. And open source project is one way of trying to build a product for the community while still keeping my job at Nickel. Quite personal reasons for why I started Big Functions. Why I think Big Functions is useful for data analysts. I think the modern data stack gave a lot of power to data analysts to do a lot of things. Collection, transformation. DBT gave them the software engineering best practice to industrialize their transforms and there are some tools to activate data. But still we're struggling with, we are lacking some tools. First, data analysts sometimes need to reinvent the wheel for some very basic functions that you think are so common that they really should be native in your data warehouse, such as a lot of data teams need to know if date is a public holiday or not to see how public holiday is impacting their sales. And every data team needs to find a sales database on the internet to load it in BigQuery to make some changes. Why isn't it possible that there's native functions in BigQuery that you can use? So the third thing is that data analysts lack some basic tools and they need to reinvent the wheel, or we want to avoid that. Second, data analysts still need to rely on data engineers to do some more complex transforms because they cannot do everything in SQL. And this is really a shame. I gave you an example. We've got a customer coming into Nickel. We know his address, and we want to know his latitude, longitude to find the nearest point of sale. How is it not possible that a data analyst is autonomous to convert direction and address to latitude, longitude? Why does it need to ask a data engineer? So we wanted to have some functions that give him this power. And to go even further, we are it has a trend today of data not only used to analyze it and to get some insights, but data and data warehouse being used to activate some data and to really take actions. So what you want is that your data analyst can call APIs of your SaaS products that you usually use to, for instance, send notification to your customers or whatever, send your data to other external tools. So you'd love to have some functions for that and give the power to the data analyst to do that. And to go even further, you also want your data analyst to activate their data in their own internal APIs of the company. Let's say, for instance, in Nickel, we have some points of sales. They have some stocks of products, of cards, of MasterCard cards. Sometimes they get out of stock. The data analyst is able to predict with machine learning that the point of sale is going to be out of stock. You want him to be able to order automatically some cards to the shop. We do have a catalog of internal APIs at Nickel, and we want the data analyst to be able to use them. So basically, to sum up, the functions can be used. You want a catalog of functions in your company to avoid your data analyst to reinvent the wheel, to do some complex transforms where before it needed a data engineer, you want to give him the power to do it, and to activate its data using external SaaS APIs or internal APIs.
And I think this is really cool. We skated a little bit around the term data product, and I don't want to go into that because this is like a huge field where people have totally different understanding. But I really love this kind of way, especially like the last one, because the other scenario would be like you involve, 4 different other teams to get this done, what you just had with the MasterCard. So you maybe need a different engineering team, maybe you need a different product team and so on. And so in the end, like possible, but definitely not something where people can quickly test different kind of approaches and can see, does it work, does it not work? And then if you want to put it in some kind of, let's say, super productive or stable kind of environment, it's still like a way to do this differently. But we have a lot talked about big functions. So maybe we take one step further. So to explain a little bit, because like this, you explained it to me beforehand. And so this was super helpful for me when I was starting to try it out, to really get an idea how big functions work in general. I will switch to the whiteboard so that I can sketch a little bit. Okay, how does big functions work? I think the first one, at least what we have to tell people, is it's BigQuery only. I don't know if this always will be BigQuery only, but I think so it relies on specific kind of, let's say, functions that BigQuery is supporting.
Actually, it could be extended to other data warehouse, just to focus on one to get started and maybe to extend to others later.
Okay, then we have different kind of functions. So we will have a look into the functions in a second. But as far as I understood you, these functions can be at least 2 different things. Am I right? Or can they be even more?
Yeah, they can be SQL function, they can be JavaScript function, native BigQuery JavaScript functions, they can be stored procedures, they can be remote functions that are going to work on Cloud Run. So you can put any code you want, Python, Java, or Node.js, or whatever you want. Actually, there's another kind of function that is not used today that we could use is Spark, PySpark procedures. This something also that we could extend big functions support.
And we will see this a little bit. I think you already said to me, of course, the preferred and easiest way is always in the end to use SQL. And this is in the end, I think it behaves a little bit the macros. Is it called macro in DBT? I think it's called macro in DBT. So where you can basically, you can refactor specific kind of SQL parts or SQL blocks that you use a lot of time, which I have these as well. So I just have them as snippets somewhere flying around. So I could put them in functions. So code is maybe something that at least like a lot of people immediately don't really have an idea. So what does happen in the end? What does happen technically when we will show it later, how you call a function. So let's say I call a function where I want to send the result of a query to a Slack channel. So what does happen under the hood, basically, that this is possible?
Yeah. Basically, you will have some code deployed on a serverless compute. BigQuery supports cloud functions in the Cloud Run. And you are going, in BigQuery, you can create some connections between your BigQuery, a BigQuery function, and a Cloud Run. So that basically, when you call a function, it's going to look at the connection and send the data to the Cloud Run. And the Cloud Run can execute, which means that in Cloud Run, you can do whatever you want. You can send the data to other APIs, so some notifications such as Slack. You can call Google Maps to translate the direction and an address to let you know. You can call Google Translate. You can do that. Scale the limits.
Yeah, you can even call, let's say, the now very famous any kind of AI model APIs, and so to enhance stuff, which is super helpful. And the nice thing, this looks quite complicated, but we will see this in a second. So the nice thing about Big Function is like you take basically all this complexity away. So in the end, this is really cool. So we will see this as like, in the end, it's just basically one CLI command that you can deploy a function, and then you can basically just use it. And everything that's happening here, at least like when you use the already built functions, all the code, all the deployment to Cloud Run, creating the BigQuery connection, this is all happening under the hood. And so you don't really have to take care about it.
What's important is that Big Function is defined standard. Each function is defined in the YAML, be it a SQL routine, be it a start procedure, be it some remote code. They're all defined in the YAML function. And through this standard, there's a CLI, a command line interface that we're going to look at after, that enables you to deploy the functions and as well as to generate some documentation.
Also important thing is there are, I don't know, how many functions do you have right now?
More than 100, I don't know really, but
let's say there are already functions which are already in the repository. But I think the super interesting thing is like, at least like for me, it's super interesting. Is like I can build my own. And it's definitely not super hard, as you already said. So like you have a configuration abstraction with YAML, where at least like in most of the cases, I can pretty quickly construct something. So for example, if I really have to use, for example, Python, then I can pretty simply, as long as it's not like a huge package and I have to, I don't know, load a lot of things. But if it's really straightforward, I can just put it into the YAML file and just deploy it.
If you are in a company, some Python package that you built and use in all the code, you can also include it in your Big Functions. Yeah, from the inspiration, as you understand, dbt has been a great source of inspiration because here we define a standard. In dbt, you have a standard. Every transform is a SQL file, plus every function is a YAML file. Plus in dbt, you have a command line interface to take the most of these YAML files and deploy them, run some tests, generate some documentation, and so on. And so dbt has been a great inspiration, as well as Airbyte. As you know, Airbyte is the most known open source project to move data from any source to a data warehouse. And they build two things, actually. They build a catalog of open source connectors, plus they provide a platform to manage these connectors. So actually here in the Big Functions repo, as you see, you have a catalog of functions of these already built functions that you can use, and as well as you've got this framework to manage them.
Yeah, basically like all the more than 100 functions that you already have, and like exactly everyone. For example, if you work with a package dbt tools, so it's basically the same. So they also have a lot of helper functions that can really help. And here you have the different kind of functions that are, let's say, provided and maintained. And so of course, like afterwards, you can see if you find something and can check if you want to do something on your own.
Now, it's interesting what you say with the dbt. Big Functions is dbt best friend. As the end with dbt is that you can do everything with SQL, and with Big Functions, all Big Functions are called from SQL. So it gives a lot more power to people who are used to use SQL.
I think this is,
like you were talking about a function to send the result of a query to Slack. So you can put this function, you can call this function from your dbt product, so that you compute a model, and at the end of the model, you send the summary results of the models to your Slack account of your product.
Yeah, and I think this makes it extremely exciting. So in the end, let's say, okay, you have a dbt model, you do all your typical dbt stuff. Let's say you have your sources, you do some business logic, you have some transformation in between. And then usually like you have your presentation layer, which like in most cases, it's just the access point for another BI tool that hooks into it, or you push it down to, or let's say another tool is loading it. But now you can basically let's say in dbt, you can add an application layer. And so in this application layer, what you just described, so I have one example later that I show, which I already implement. I didn't implement it in dbt yet, but I already have it as a scheduled query, which for example, sends some notification into Slack after every Monday morning. So to give a quick heads up to the team about specific kind of data. And of course, there are a million kind of tools where you can do this. But honestly, I think everyone who has worked with modern data stack setups, the more you can do within one tool or within one setup, in the end, like the easier it gets to maintain. And here it's really nice. So it's in the end just one query that you add to your DBT model.
Essentially, what you say is it's going to work if you use DBT, if you use scheduled query, if you use Dataform, if you use SQL Match, whatever the tool you use, it will work.
Yeah, that's right. So we can use whatever you want. And let me just put down application layer so that we can really use this. So as said, so these, for example, are already the things that you can use out of the box. And if you want to test them, I think they are available for some public data sets already if you're in BigQuery.
Yeah, actually, yes. Every function, every YAML file which is on the repo is automatically deployed in 37 or 39 data sets for every BigQuery locations that exist. And this data set up in public red access so that anybody can call it from his own project without any install.
And maybe just as a context, because this was something that I had to understand, is like in the end, and I think this comes down how BigQuery is handling the BigQuery connections. So for example, you cannot say, okay, I deploy big functions for my GCP project. So in the end, you have to deploy it on a data set level. Is that right?
Yeah, basically what you want is to put most of the functions that you want to give access to in your company in a data set, so they're all grouped together and they're easier to find.
So in the end, this also makes it really powerful because, as you already said, so you can make a selection. So of course, you don't deploy all big functions to one data set because like it wouldn't really make sense. So in the end, you pick the ones that really fit. So for example, if you have your application layer, then the application layer can be a data set, or most of the time is a data set, or it depends on how you configure DBT. DBT is often one data set. So then you have everything available there. But it depends a little bit on how you build DBT. So you can even be very granular. So if you just have, for example, for the last layer, you have a specific kind of data set, then for this one, for example, you deploy the big functions that you really need. Okay, so let's have a look how this looks like. We have this different kind of functions. Now, I want to start how you deploy the whole thing because it's so straightforward and so easy that it's definitely valid to just show it. So before I was not sure, okay, do we have to install too much and so on, but everyone will see. So it's really quick to do. I prepared a little bit, so at least like I installed everything. What I did is I cloned the repo, which of course you can find here. Here you have it. So I cloned this one into my own project, and then I ran, let me just check that we have it here. Of course, I wanted to have the big fun CLI. First of all, congratulations on one of the best names for CLIs that I saw so far. I know it's obvious, but still it's good that you landed there because it's definitely big fun to use it. And so I basically ran, of course, I created a virtual environment and ran the install. And then I basically have the CLI available. And the first run with the CLI, I get some question asked. So I can define, for example, like the data set where I want to deploy my functions. Then, of course, like the GCP project that I have. Then this is also nice. First of all, it's definitely super nice that you implemented something like this. So there is a quota management in there because some functions can create massive compute. So for example, you have a terabyte of, weblog data, and so we do this example in a second, and you want to check for all the referrer information, what kind of website this is actually. So you can easily run to a lot of different kind of records. And so, of course, you maybe don't want to do that because like it will always initiate like a call to a Cloud Run instance, run it and so on. I mean, Cloud Run is pretty cost effective, but still, if you run 1 terabyte of data, of rows through it, it might create some, not so happy faces in your finance department. And so this is really nice that in the end, initially you already have a very hard quota put in. Was it something that you already thought about from the beginning, or was it something that you by accident created things that were running too long? I'd say in general, this is really good that you have this quota. And for example, this is why my email is in here, because I'm now the quota contact. Because when someone is trying to run it now and he or she comes across the quota, they will get basically an error message, and then they can just contact me and we can negotiate if we can raise the quota or not. So this is the initial configuration that's created. And then the only thing when we want to deploy something is like, just let me quickly go into here and then activate the virtual environment. All right. And so then, of course, we have big fun. And we can deploy, and then I can pick which kind of function. So, for example, I haven't added the weather data function yet, and this is a useful function. So at least like I know enough data setups where we pulled weather data for enriching analytics data. This is really useful. So let me pick this one. Then I can deploy it. Okay, and now as you can see here, I just get some warnings. I think this is mostly because like how I have authenticated here. And now it's basically doing all the things that we just discussed before. And this is everyone who has worked with Cloud Run knows this. So this, for example, is like the typical, let's say, status message that you see that a new Cloud Run function or Cloud Run service is deployed. And this is what it's doing right now. So it takes the weather function and deploys it. So it builds the container and then it basically deploys it in my Cloud Run instance in my BigQuery, or not BigQuery, in my GCP project. And it does all automatically for me. I don't really have to take care. So it will take now a while. We might make this shorter in the video, but we're already at routing traffic. Oh, this is pretty quick. And now the final part, at least I'll correct me if I'm wrong, is it now also makes the final connection to the BigQuery dataset so that the dataset can basically access it.
Exactly, yeah. There are a lot of stuff that is happening under the hood that you don't need to worry about.
And this is super helpful. And so now I would be able to use the function already in BigQuery, which brings us to, let's say, to some demo, because it's nice to show what we can potentially deploy. And before we do this so quickly, so for example, here you can see all the different kind of functions, and here you can also see the YAMLs that we were talking about. So before we move on, let's have a quick look. I'm just looking. Yeah, here we have it. So this, for example, is like the functions that we just deployed, as you can see here. So there are arguments defined that I need to provide if I want to use this function. Of course, I need to provide for which kind of location I want to have the weather data. And then here we can see the code that's actually doing this. So in the end, here's also like let's say the API is used. So for example, if you have a different API that you might use for getting your weather data because maybe you have a paid account somewhere, then for example, you can easily just create your own weather function and just swap the things that fit for you. And yeah, it calls the API, it gets the URL, it prepares the data a little bit, and then in the end, it just returns the data. I think, okay, now it takes it from the JSON things, it returns it in a proper way. And then the BigQuery then can basically pick up the data and can do whatever I want to do with it in the query. Okay. Anything else that we should show about the YAML?
Yeah, what's interesting that the BigQuery CLI command line enabled you to deploy the function, but as well as to generate the documentation.
Okay.
Maybe if you want, try to do BigQuery docs serve. I hope it will work.
Okay, and?
Serve like us to serve. SERVE.
SER?
No, like a server.
Yeah, okay. I have it.
But not server, just server. Huh?
Yeah, I know. I know another famous package that we already mentioned that basically is using the same kind of command.
So what's happening here is that's going to part the YAML and generate some documentation for every function and generate the portal that we saw. That's public on Dyntics. It's going to be deployed to be generated and served here locally in your.
Yeah, which might fail now on my end because like I'm running on code spaces and sometimes I have to open up some permissions. So we have to see. This might take a little bit. No. Here we are. Nice. Okay. Yeah, that's great.
That's interesting because in your company, you are not going to deploy every function. You can put functions you need.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, calling your internal APIs in the big functions folder. And then you can generate a documentation portal that you can make available to every BigQuery user.
Yeah, this is really cool. I followed your content for a long time and also what kind of new stuff you have added to big functions. But the one thing that was always missing for me is like how easy it is to use it as a framework, or maybe framework is the wrong term for it, but basically use it as an internal tool to build the things that we need internally. And so it might be that we already are covered 60% by the existing functions, but there might be, let's say, other things that we can add. And what I always like about these kind of frameworks is like, because it's so easy to extend it, it will enable so many people to think about, okay, look, I can just put it in a function now. Because like when you tried it once and you saw how straightforward it is, it's super easy to then build something new. This is a really cool thing for a data team to then send out to all the different kind of analysts. Look, we have some things when we talk to you where we know that you will always repeating the same thing over and over. We made it easy as possible now. I don't know, you want to break down a date by, let's say, the typical things like, I don't know, you want to have quarter and so on. So we made it super simple for you to always generate the same kind of block for you with a new function.
And what's important as well that we didn't mention yet is that in some companies you want to have a validation workflow. You don't want any people to deploy any function. Actually, it's going to be like DBT actually. You put the repo in your own Git repo and you can have your validation workflow. And so anybody can propose some changes, propose a new function, and you've got only some people who can approve it. And the function is going to be deployed automatically once it's approved.
Yeah, so you can basically apply the same kind of, let's say, typical software processes that you can also apply now to DBT and so on. So yeah, this is super helpful. Okay, let's have a look what we can do with the function. So we are now in BigQuery. This was the first part for me is, okay, how do I add now the functions to it? So first of all, okay, it's important that I have to be in the right data set. So if I now would try to run the functions in another data set, I will get an error that this kind of function is not available in the data set. Also, BigQuery is pretty clear in the error message why it's not working. So if you want to use it for another data set, of course, like you have to deploy it to another data set. But let me show some examples that I created. Of course, like I did some videos where I did some live SQL writing, but I usually try not to do it because it takes a really long time to do all these different kind of things. So the first example that I want to show you is, so I always like to do really real life things. And so, for example, what we have here, so here you can see, so we are in the right data set. So we deployed everything to this data set just before. And what I have here is I have my Pivot Pro data from deepskydata.com. So we run Pivot Pro there and we get, like, say, the typical website data, what you get. So one thing which could be interesting for me is, of course, we have some people linking to us from somewhere. And this over time can be an interesting source, for example, SEO managers to understand, okay, where do we get backlinks for? What I usually get from Pivot Pro is I just get the referrer URL where someone is coming from before they landed on our website. What could be interesting for me is like to learn a little bit more about these kind of websites, because some websites are obvious, but everyone who works with analytics data knows you get a ton of referral data where you have no idea what this kind of website is about. So what I'm doing here is now I basically get the information about the referral URL. I limit it down because like my approach would be like, and this is again like typical DBT scenario. So I would maybe this put in a source layer to say, okay, I want to create a specific table where I enrich the referrer URLs. I do it just for one referrer URL once, because I don't want to call the API or want to request the data, 100 times for the same kind of URL. So I can build it in a way that is really efficient. So for example, like I could extend it also like in the future to ignore everything which already has metadata saved, so that in the end just makes incremental updates. So this is really nice. So I can put this on my source layer. And so for test reasons, I just get it for 3 websites, because what you will see in a second is I run this initial query. So it gets the data. Then here we have the important part. It passes it on to the big function, which gets me the website metadata. So it picks up here the referrer URL, so it does it for every row that we have, and it then triggers the Cloud Run that is getting this kind of information. And as I said already before, if I would have, 1 million rows, then it would request for 1 million websites at the same time. So definitely makes sense to put in some logic here to make it as efficient as possible. So right now, for demo reasons, we have a very low data set. There shouldn't be any big surprises. And then in the end, I run it as a normal query. You can see as well. And as you can see here, it's quite quick to see. And I have enriched my data, which is really nice. So what we can see here now, let me just expand this. This is all the metadata that I can get from a website. So metadata is the thing that you put into meta text on a website. So it usually has a title somewhere. It always has a description like this. So for example, the description would be something which is super helpful for me, because I could now even, let's say, run this again against an AI endpoint and could say, please categorize this. And I define the categories. And at least like the current language models are quite good in categorizing these kind of things. So this could be something, here's the title. And so this could already be something helpful for, some marketing reports where they want to better understand where the traffic is coming from. And I guess this is like how weather data would also work as well. And I guess like other kind of things that I request.
Retrieving some data from sources is still a good scenario for functions.
Yeah, and this comes back to the point which you already described before. It's like without big functions, this would be usually like a task to, let's say, data engineering team to say, hey, we need a script or a service that runs every night that goes through all the different kind of referrer URLs. Then they basically do the same thing. So they might have, I don't know, maybe in the similar way, they have some script which is deployed on Cloud Run. The script scans through the table, does the same thing what we're doing here right now, and then writes it back. And with this, we can make it a lot easier. So it makes it a lot easier accessible. Okay, so this is example number 1. Let me do the second one, which is even more fun. This is already something which I already deployed to production on our end. So some explanations what we're doing. First of all, we want to send a Slack message. Why is sending Slack message a good idea? Just because we might have analysts, and you have almost 200 people who work in BigQuery, but you might have even more people who don't work in BigQuery. So it's the same for us as well. So we have 1 or 2 people working with the data directly, but most of the people, they are mostly consuming the data. And I'm always a big fan of sending insights or small insights into channels to basically trigger data discovery mode. Because like sometimes people don't really think about specific kind of scenarios they want to find out. So these messages where I send something like, look, this is interesting, send it out is always helpful. And for example, what is really helpful for us is like to understand, looking back in the last week. So we have a website where we have courses, so where you might watch this video now as well. So what we always want to know is what were the most popular courses that has been started in the last week? Because sometimes we even pick this up and maybe do a quick session on it to think about, oh, look, this kind of topic at the moment becomes really relevant because a lot of people are accessing it. So it's interesting information for us. And of course, we have some dashboards where you can go into, but you always have to proactively go there. So I really love the idea to send it into a Slack channel. And so what I do is I just prepare the data here on my end. So I have an event table where I can see how many people have started any kind of courses. This is what I do here. And then, of course, like I want to have it for the last 7 days. And in the end, I just want to have the top one. So this is like why I here limit it down by 1 as well, because I just want to not send the top 3 one. I could do the same here as well, but I just want to have this. And here I construct just the Slack message. And here I put in the name of the field that we have up here. And then I have my webhook URL that I get from Slack. So it's pretty straightforward to create this in Slack. In the end, you just go, you create your own Slack app and then say, okay, I want to have a webhook. I want to use a webhook to send the data in there. And then you basically get this kind of URL. So you provide it to the big function. And then we can just run it. And let me do this. It's pretty quick, at least like when I tested it. Yeah, here we are. So of course, this is not now super helpful. Just let me see that I can show it. Okay, so now we can see here, this is our Deep Sky data channel. And as you can see here, this is like where I was testing some days ago. And this is like our new message, what we can see here. And so right now, it's not a big surprise. The Google Analytics 4 one was really like the most popular one over a lot of weeks. But now we can see, so there's again gaining the crown back from the other course that was the top one last week. And this is really nice. What I did is now I even took a step further to, in the end, I schedule this query now. So right now I don't use dbt for all my BigQuery stuff here. So because it's a very small data model which I use. So if I would use dbt, I would just put this kind of model here, as I said, in the application layer. But to make it straightforward, directly in BigQuery, what I do is I just schedule this query. And so this query, for example, now runs every Monday morning to get this kind of information to send it into Slack. And this is super cool. I can already tell you I will build a lot of these stuffs now because, like, as said, it's super straightforward. This query to construct it's not super hard because this is already prepared data. So this comes out of a data model. And then in the end, I just pick some insights from here and I can just pass it on. We discussed so many other different kind of use cases. Do you have some use cases where you use big functions quite a lot?
Yeah, the to-send notification is, I think, one of the most used because it's so easy. And there are so many use cases where you want to send your product team, your business team, some news.
Yeah, and we can see it here. So you have different kind of ways. We could also have sent an email. And we could even send an email with an Excel file, since we all know that people love Excel files for good reasons. We could send it into Teams. So yeah.
What's interesting as well is that you can go any function and combine them. So that, for instance, we do have customers in every country. We do have the comments of surveys in BigQuery. So we first call Google Translate to all translate them in one language. And then we use sentiment score function to compute the sentiment score of each And then for the ones who are the most happy, like we want to send them a specific email. So there's a third function that's going to contact them and send them an email.
Ah, yeah, that's nice. So this is already like a really good marketing or customer success use case to basically create all this. In the end, because it's so simple, it's not really like that we have to build so long something like this. It's pretty straightforward to implement. So in the end, what I did here is the same thing what I did before. I just went here and I deployed it, the function from here, and then it was available after 2 or 3 minutes. And then I think it took me 5 minutes to test a little bit around how I want to get the data and then how to construct the things. And I think the longest part took me to find the right emoji, which I want to send with this. Then it was already there. So maybe as a final thing, how long have you been working now on this? Which, I mean, it's still your side project. So it's
Yeah, actually a lot of nights, but I'm not alone. There are 23 contributors today.
Yeah.
So yeah, the more contributors we will have, the more easier to.
So maybe two things.
It's really the aim of making it open source. The aim is that it could become a catalog of functions built by anybody. So that the work of anybody can help others.
Can also help other people. How do you, so like maybe two things. So first of all, if you want to contribute, so for example, you use already big functions. So how does it usually work? So when you say, okay, we have a function.
It's like any open source project. You're going to fork the repo, create a function on your own repo and create a merge request. Actually, I'm thinking of making it even easier for people who are not used to use Git to contribute as well on Git, but with the simplifying the process with the UI.
Yeah. This makes sense. And what else do you have planned out, at least like for 24 for big functions?
I want to focus these days more on the kind of function that we didn't talk today, which are functions which generate some visualization. So maybe if you want to go on the website and the Explorer, you can see the Explore like this. Even afterwards, export table function. Like this is one example of a function which is going to generate a visualization, an HTML report. And what's interesting is that you can see the result of the function directly in your BigQuery console.
Yeah.
So this is just one example doing some profiling of your table, and for every column showing this, but actually I'm thinking of making some functions that could do some kind of analysis, generate some HTML report that you can use directly from BigQuery console, such as funnel analysis, journeys analysis, impact on analysis between features and a target feature or whatever.
Yeah, no, this is super helpful. What we see right now, this is usually if you work with a data set that you don't really know yet. Like, for example, if you work in a notebook, at least like my approach is always like I usually start with this to get an idea how the data set looks like. And then in BigQuery, it's the same thing. So I would really love to see more context that.
If you go just a bit above, there's a documentation that you can open.
This one?
Yeah, open this. So it shows you, this video shows you how you install. You take the link that's here, you put it in a bookmark, then you go into BigQuery, you run the query you want. First, you activate the button. Then you run the query you want. You select some HTML. What the button does is it's going to look if there is a result in BigQuery table with one cell containing HTML, and if it does, it will render it. So actually, you can see the result of a function directly on your console. And this can be any kind of HTML report, actually.
Yeah, and this is straightforward. So you one time have the bookmarklet, which in the end like runs some JavaScript code, and then you just activate it, and then you can run the different kind of reports.
What I want to do is even to go further and to have an interactive report so that you can have a funnel report and you can select an event, see the evolution of event counts for this event, and compare the funnel analysis between two periods and so on.
Yeah, so in the end, like building let's say the analysis tool that BigQuery never really offered, or let's say in the end, Google Cloud never really offered for us. Or they offer it, but you have to pay for it, at least like for Looker. Maybe you can build, let's say, a small Looker within BigQuery. No, I think this is super helpful. And it can also be like people can now think about what you can do, because in the end, what you do is, I think you showed me a little bit the last time, is like, in the end, you just generate HTML code. And then the bookmarklet is just making the HTML code rendered. in the end.
Exactly, yes.
So anyone can build now some kind of reports. There are some good charting libraries around that you can use for this. Awesome. Thank you so much. I think this was a really good introduction. So at least like for me, it already explains a lot of things that I was not aware of, what I can do with big functions. So for me, definitely if I'm on a project that is on BigQuery, this will be definitely something that I would consider to deploy for teams to use, because like you can save so many things. So like,
Thank you, Timo. It was very nice to be here. I'm very grateful for all the time you took to prepare this video, to prepare all the to use the big functions, to try it, to go deep in using it, and to preparing this
Yeah.
which is really great.
And here comes the interesting part. In the end, it was actually not so much time, because like it was, as I said, the whole package is so easy to use. So it's, I had 1 or 2 questions, so I sent it over. So you helped me with that. But this was more like saving time to test more things. But in the end, I think the whole initial setup that I just showed today was something of an hour of implementation stuff. This might be a motivation for everyone to try it out, because it doesn't really take a lot of time. So yeah, great work.
Thank you, Timo.
Thank you.